The day we buried Lloyd, the sky wept with me. Low, heavy clouds hung overhead, pressing down like the grief in my chest. My husband gone in an instant. A heart attack. After 42 years together, I found myself alone in our small home on the edge of New Braunfels. I'm 67. I thought I knew everything about Lloyd, his habits, his thoughts, his dreams. But a week after the funeral, I discovered I didn't know everything. I got a call from a man named Benjamin Thiel, Lloyd's attorney. I'd never heard of him. He welcomed me into an office that smelled of old paper and coffee. His eyes sharp, his demeanor calm. "Mrs. Haxton," he said, hands folded neatly. "Your husband left a will. One you didn't know about." "A will?" I asked, heart tightening. "But we didn't have much. The house is nearly paid off. Some savings." Benjamin gave a small sigh and pulled out a folder. "Your husband was more careful than you knew. He made quiet investments for years. Purchased real estate." He handed me a photo. I stared. It showed a massive white-columned estate, surrounded by towering cypress trees. "Is this ... ours?" I whispered ... "Yes. It's called Cypress Grove. Your husband bought it 5 years ago. Paid in full. It's worth about $7 million. It's now in your name. I don't even remember driving home." My thoughts were spinning. Why had Lloyd never told me? We'd always lived modestly. I'd patched clothes until they fell apart. And all this time, at home, I sat in my old armchair, flipping through our photo albums. I saw the life we built me at the IRS Lloyd at a small engineering firm. We looked like ordinary people. Where did the wealth come from? Then I found an old notebook of his. Near the back was a faded entry, dated 12 years ago. Started CR project. Virginia will never know. A surprise for our old age. See a Cypress Grove. A few days later, I drove out to see it. I followed the directions to a high iron gate, punched in the code, and watched the gate slowly swing open. A cypress-lined road led to a breathtaking colonial mansion. I parked and sat staring, uncertain. Was this really mine? Inside, it was even more stunning. Marble floors, spiral staircases. Lake view from enormous windows. In the master bedroom, I found an envelope with my name in Lloyd's handwriting. "My dearest Jenny, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I kept Cypress Grove a secret. I wanted to surprise you on our 45th anniversary. I invested every spare dollar, worked extra jobs. I wanted us to spend our later years somewhere beautiful. You always sacrificed for us. This was my way of saying thank you. It's yours now. Do with it as you see fit. I've always loved you." Lloyd. I sat on the bed and cried. He had wanted to give me the world. Instead, he left me with a secret and a storm of questions. When I returned home, Garrett and Willow were waiting. They dropped by to check on me. Garrett, my only son, had changed since Lloyd's death. He was distant, cold. Willow, sharp-eyed and sugar-voiced, looked at me with thinly veiled interest. "Mom, where have you been?" Garrett asked. "Errands," I said, hanging my coat. "You look worried," Willow added, her tone falsely sweet. She always had a way of speaking that reminded me of a predator, graceful, watching, calculating. An accountant at a construction firm. She talked about money like it was oxygen. I made tea. Garrett sat down. "We were thinking. The house is too much for you. Maybe you could sell and downsize." "I'm fine," I said flatly. "I like this house." Willow jumped in. "It would be smart financially. You could invest the rest." I turned away to hide my irritation. Lloyd and I lived modestly. We didn't spend what we didn't have. But I knew what this was about. At Lloyd's wake, I'd overheard Willow on the phone. She was out in the garden, not knowing I was nearby. Yes, Caitlin. It was a small place, very modest. 40 years of work and barely anything to show. Garrett says his parents were misers. I just hope there's something left. I mean, how long does she even have? We've got kids to raise. Kids? They didn't even have kids. That's when I knew. I would never tell them about Cypress Grove, now. They were sniffing around my finances. Willow was, accidentally, opening drawers in my office. Once I caught her going through papers. Oh, I was just looking for family photos, she lied, holding a folder labeled retirement accounts. Garrett seemed confused, passive, drifting further from me. When he did visit, it was usually with Willow. I missed the son I used to know. One evening he said, "Mom, we've been thinking, maybe you could move in with us. The guest room's always free." Why would I do that? You know, for support, you wouldn't have to worry about housekeeping. I smiled politely. I'm 67, not 97. I like my home. Willow leaned in. It would be wonderful for our future children to grow up near their grandmother. Sweet words. But her eyes told a different story. After they left, I sat in silence. Garrett used to be warm, open. Was this all Willow's doing? Or had Lloyd's death broken something between us? I made a decision that night. Cypress Grove stays a secret. For months, I lived a quiet double life. I was still the modest widow. In town. But 2 or 3 times a week, I'd slip away and spend time at Cypress Grove. I hired a gardener, Otis Fenn, a silent, trustworthy man. I don't talk, Mrs. Haxton, he said. Your business stays your business. Back home. Willow's. Probing intensified. Questions. Excuses. Suspicious visits. I knew what she wanted, but I wouldn't give it to her. Then one evening, the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Haxton? A man's voice asked. My name is Harland. Drew, your neighbor in Cypress Grove. We don't know each other personally, but Otis gave me your number. I'm tense. Why would a gardener give my number to a neighbor? What can I do for you, Mr. Drew? Probably nothing, but I thought you should know. There was a woman hanging around your house today. She was asking my gardener who owns Cypress Grove. My heart skipped a beat. Have you seen this woman? Can you describe her? Not very well. Slender, dark hair, drove up in a silver sedan. She said she was interested in buying property in our neighborhood. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Thank you for the information, Mr. Drew. That's very kind of you. You're welcome, Mrs. Haxton. Neighbors have to look out for each other. After I hung up the phone, I sank into a chair. Slim, dark hair, silver sedan. Willow had a car just like that. Coincidence? I don't think so. But how did she know about the mansion? I was so careful. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. My secret was in jeopardy, and I had no idea what would happen next. Spring came early in New Braunfels. The March sun was already warming the earth, and the cypress trees around the estate were beginning to turn fresh green. I loved these mornings in the cypress grove. The silence punctuated only by birdsong and the wonderful sense of peace that had been missing lately. Today I arrived earlier than usual when the dew was still glistening on the grass. It had been a week since the neighbor's call, but the restlessness won't let go. I kept looking around, checking to see if anyone was following me. Paranoia, maybe, but my gut told me Willow wouldn't back down. As I slowly made my way around the grounds of the estate, I pondered what to do next. Sell, move here permanently, tell Garrett the truth. Each option had its pros and cons. "Good morning, Mrs. Haxton." Otis's voice made me wheezy. He appeared from behind the hedge, garden shears in hand. "I'm sorry if I startled you." "It's all right, Otis. I was just thinking." He nodded, wiping his hands on his work gloves. "I wanted to tell you that I trimmed the bushes on the south side like you asked." And also he hesitated. "I think you should know that someone came by yesterday." My heart skipped a beat. "Came by here? Not in the house?" "No. But I noticed footprints on the ground near the east fence where it's lower, and a piece of cloth on the barbed wire at the top. Looks like someone climbed over." "Did you report it to the police?" Otis shook his head. "Didn't bother the authorities. Nothing was missing as far as I could tell, but I reinforced that area and put up a camera. An old one, but a working one." I smiled gratefully. Otis was a real find, not verbose but attentive and caring. "Thank you, Otis. I appreciate your thoughtfulness." He nodded and went back to work, and I headed toward the house, feeling my anxiety rising. Someone was watching the estate, perhaps even trespassing. Was it a coincidence, or did Willow really suspect something? In the master bedroom, I opened the safe hidden behind the painting. Another inheritance from Lloyd. It held the most important documents. The title deeds, the insurance, the will. It was all there. I breathed a sigh of relief, but it shouldn't relax. Before I left, I walked around the estate one more time, checking the locks and windows. There were fresh footprints by the eastern fence. A mussed grass, a broken branch. Someone was anxious to find out what lay beyond the high fence of the cypress grove. As I walked back to my usual home, I could feel the tension rising. How long would my disguise last? What if Willow already knew about the estate? How would Garrett react when he found out I'd hidden my father's inheritance from him? As I pulled up to the house, I spotted a familiar silver sedan at the curb. Willow, what's she doing here on a weekday? For all I knew, she was supposed to be at work. I parked and cautiously entered the house through the back door. It was quiet. No sounds of presence. It's weird. A car parked and no one in the house. As I passed yesterday, I noticed the door was ajar. I remembered closing it before I left. My heart beat faster. Slowly pushing the door open, I peeked inside. It was empty. But something was wrong. My gazephel on the desk. The drawers were slightly pulled out. The folders not in the order I'd left them. Someone was going through my things. I rushed to the closet where I kept Lloyd's old papers. The big box was still in place, but the lid had been slid off. The inside was a mess. Papers jumbled. Some folders had clearly been looked through. I began frantically going through the contents, trying to figure out what was missing. The sound of the front door slamming shut made me freeze. Quick footsteps in the hallway. Keys jingling. "Mom, are you home?" Garrett's voice. I straightened up, trying to keep my hands from shaking. In the study, he appeared in the doorway, looking surprised. "I didn't expect to see you. Thought you were at your book meeting. It was cancelled." I lied. "Why aren't you at work?" "I forgot some important papers." Het pointed to the folder in his hand. I stopped by to pick it up. His gaze slid over the open cabinet. The paper scattered about. "Looking for something?" "Yeah. Old photos," I said, trying to sound casual. "I wanted to show Martha." Garrett nodded, but there was something in his eyes. Suspicious. Or was it just me? "By the way, Willow and I want to invite you to dinner on Saturday. It's nothing fancy, just family night." "I'd love to," I replied, thinking about the silver sedan outside the house. Isn't Willow working tonight? No, she's at a conference in Austin. He glanced at his watch. I've got to run until Saturday. Saturday? When he left, I sank slowly into a chair. Willow's in Austin? Then Wo's car was parked in front of the house. And who was going through my papers? I went through the papers again, more methodically, and soon I found the missing folder with Lloyd's bank account information. It wasn't anything valuable, just old statements. But the fact that someone had been looking for financial records on purpose alarmed me. Saturday night came all too quickly. I spent 2 days anxiously waiting, trying to figure out what Willow and Garrett knew. I drove to Cypress Grove several times, checking to make sure everything was okay. Otis had installed 2 more perimeter cameras and assured me he would report any suspicious activity. Garrett and Willow's house was in a newer neighborhood, a typical suburban cottage, too big for a family without children. Willow opened the door with a wide smile that didn't reach her eyes. Virginia. What a pleasure. Come on in. It's almost ready. I walked in, noting to myself the new furniture in the living room. A leather couch that clearly cost more than Garrett's monthly salary. It's a nice couch, I remarked. New. Yeah, it just arrived last week. Willow ran her hand over the smooth leather. We decided we deserved a little comfort. With whose money? I almost asked but held back. Garrett came out of the kitchen with a glass of wine. Mum, I'm glad you came. You look great. That was an exaggeration. I hadn't been sleeping well the last few days, and the circles under my eyes gave away my condition. Dinner was exquisite. Scallops, steaks, expensive wine, too lavish for an ordinary family evening. I ate in silence, waiting for them to get to the true purpose of this meeting. Willow spoke first as we moved on to dessert. Virginia, Garrett, and I wanted to discuss something important with you. Here we go. I put down my fork and braced myself. We've been thinking a lot about the future, she continued, and financial stability, especially now that we're planning children. Garrett gave her a quick glance that I couldn't decipher. Mom, he coughed. We think you need to think about long-term planning, about a will, insurance, estate administration. My will is fine, I replied in a steady voice. So is the insurance, but you haven't discussed it with us. Willow leaned forward. This is about the whole family. Really? I raised an eyebrow. I think my will is all about me. Mom. Garrett looked embarrassed. What Willow means is that after Dad, we need to make sure that everything is, properly organized. Exactly. Willow picked up on that. There's no telling what could happen. At your age, Virginia, it's common for people to make not the smartest decisions. I set my glass down so hard that the wine almost spilled out. What do you mean, Willow? Nothing bad, she said with a strange smile. It's just that a lot of people get more impressionable. They can fall under Samin's influence, jump to conclusions, especially in matters of inheritance. And what makes you think I have any significant inheritance? My tone turned icy. Garrett and Willow exchanged glances. We're not talking about anything specific, Garrett began cautiously. But Dad's always been frugal. There must have been some savings, investments, real estate maybe, Willow added casually. My heart skipped a beat. They know or suspect, but how? Lloyd left enough for me to live comfortably, I said evasively. Don't worry about that. But we do worry. Willow put her hand over mine, and I struggled not to pull away. Old people shouldn't make important financial decisions without consulting their families, especially when there's a lot of money involved. I pulled my hand away and straightened up. I'm 67, Willow. I'm not a senile old woman, and I'm perfectly capable of handling my finances without help. Mom, no one's saying you're not doing fine, Garrett interjected. We just want to be in the know as a family. In the know about what, Garrett? I looked directly at my son. What exactly are you interested in? He looked away. Just, the big picture. Just to know that everything's okay. Everything's perfectly fine. I got up from the table. Thanks for dinner. But I got to go. I have early plans tomorrow. Are you going somewhere? Willow asked quickly. Does it matter? Just wondering. She shrugged with feigned indifference. Mom. Don't leave like that. Garrett stood up. We didn't mean to upset you. I'm not upset, Garrett. I'm just surprised at your sudden interest in my finances. Willow stood up as well, her face taking on a hard expression. Virginia, you may not realize this, but this is about Garrett's future. His father's inheritance, which should rightfully go to him. Willow. Garrett gave his wife a warning look. No, Garrett. Stop beating around the bush. She turned to me. We know that Lloyd left more than just this old house. And we think Garrett has a right to know the whole truth. There was a heavy silence in the room. I stared at my daughter-in-law, fighting the urge to tell her what I thought. If you have any specific questions about Lloyd's estate, I said at last, you can ask his attorney. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really must be going. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Garrett followed me. Mum, please don't be mad. Willow's just worried about money, Garrett. She's worried about the money, not me. That's not true. But there was no confidence in his voice. You're too smart not to see that, I sighed. Your father always thought you let others make decisions for you. I guess he was right. His face contorted with resentment. And you and your father always thought I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough. Garrett, that's not true. It is. He lowered his voice. Why do you think he left me? Nothing. Everything for you. Nothing for me. Didn't even warn me about. He paused, realizing he'd said too much. About what, Garrett? I asked quietly. Nothing. He looked away. It didn't matter. I walked out into the cool night, feeling the anxiety growing inside me. They know something, and that something has to do with Lloyd's inheritance. How far would they be willing to go to get it? When I got home, the first thing I did was check the study. Everything looked untouched, but I didn't trust my first impressions. I methodically went through the folders and drawers, trying to see if anything else was missing. In the lowest drawer of my desk, I kept a folder of information about the estate. Copies of title deeds, attorney contacts, insurance papers. The originals, of course, were in the safe in Cypress Grove, but even the copies could tell me a lot. The folder wasn't there. Panic overwhelmed me. I searched the entire office, checked every possible place, but the folder was nowhere to be found. Someone had taken it, and that someone who knew about Cypress Grove. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and drove to the estate. It was late afternoon, but I had to make sure everything was okay. As I approached the gate, I noticed it was ajar. My heart hammered in my throat. I definitely remembered closing them in the morning. Driving slowly into the grounds, I stopped and listened. It was silent. Only the wind rustled in the crowns of the trees. The house looked untouched. The dark windows, the locked front door. I walked around checking doors and windows. Everything was locked. Maybe Otis had forgotten to lock the gate. Unlikely. He was very pedantic. I walked into the house and turned on the lights. Everything seemed fine, but some sixth sense told me someone had been here. Walking through the living room, I noticed a displaced cushion on the couch, as if someone had been sitting on it. In the study, the desk drawer was not fully closed. Walking up to the master bedroom, I headed straight for the safe. My heart pounded frantically as I entered the code. The door opened and I was relieved to see that the documents were in place. At least the most important things were safe. But something still bothered me. I looked around more closely and noticed the slight smell of perfume, not mine. Someone had definitely been here, and recently. Going downstairs, I checked the back door. The lock looked intact, but there was a faint mark on the handle on the outside, as if someone had tried to open it with gloves on. The ringing off the phone made me jump. It was Otis. Mrs. Haxton, sorry for the late call. I was reviewing the security footage and I noticed something strange. What was it, Otis? A silver car passed the gate 3 times that day, and around 4 o'clock, the footage shows a woman entering the grounds. The camera on the east wall has her outside the house. Can you describe this woman? Slender dark hair dressed in dark clothing. Can't get much more detail than that because the camera's too far away. Willow, it's got to be her. But how did she know the gate code? Thank you, Otis. Please be extra careful in the next few days. I changed the code on the gate, will you? I already did, Mrs. Haxton, and added another camera at the main entrance. I smiled gratefully, even though he couldn't see it. You're a real treasure, Otis. When I got home past midnight, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts revolved around one question. What to do next? Willow obviously knew about the estate, and was willing to go to great lengths to get her share. Garrett seemed to know too, though maybe not all the details. I needed advice, legal advice from someone I could trust. I thought of Mariah Koo, the lawyer who'd helped handle the probate after Lloyd's death. We weren't close friends, but she had always treated me with respect and understanding. I called her office this morning and made an appointment. It's regarding Lloyd Haxton's estate, I told the receptionist, and I was immediately scheduled for 11 o'clock. Mariah's office was in an old building downtown. She greeted me with a professional smile, but there was genuine concern in her eyes. Virginia, it's good to see you. Although the circumstances don't seem to be the most pleasant, do they? I'm afraid so. Mariah, I'm having trouble with Cypress Grove. Mariah Koo's office looked exactly as I'd expected, austere, functional, with a hint of feminine presence in the form of an orchid on the windowsill and a soft plaid on the back of a chair. Mariah herself, a trim woman of 55 with short greying hair, listened attentively to my story, occasionally making notes in her notebook. So, she summarized when I finished. Your daughter-in-law supposedly discovered the existence of the estate, broke into your house to search for documents, and then illegally entered the Cypress Grove property. Is that correct? Yes, although I have no direct evidence, only coincidences and my suspicions. Mariah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen on her notepad. Virginia, I suggest we hire a private investigator. We need to find out exactly what your daughter-in-law knows and what her plans are. A private investigator. I clutched my bag nervously. Isn't that a little dramatic? No more dramatic than trespassing on your house and estate. She smiled softly. Believe me, it's better to know what we're dealing with than to guess. I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. Finally, someone was taking my concerns seriously. I have a trusted person, Mariah continued. Bivens, ex-cop, no working. As a private investigator, discreet, efficient, and importantly, well-connected. Okay, I agreed. What do we need to do? I'll call Bivens. You continue with your normal behavior. Don't let your daughter-in-law know you suspect anything. And please, be careful. 3 days later, Mariah called and asked me to come right away. There was an anxiety in her voice that she didn't try to hide. Bivens was a short, stocky man with expressive eyes and deep wrinkles that spoke of a rich life experience. He greeted me with a brief nod and got right to the point. Mrs. Haxton, I'm afraid the situation is more serious than we thought. He opened a folder of photographs. Your daughter-in-law has indeed hired a private detective. One Reiner. Not the most law-abiding, if you know what I mean. He showed me some pictures where I recognized Willow talking to an unremarkable man in a grey suit. This Reiner has been following you for at least 2 weeks. Tracked your every move, especially your trips to Cypress Grove. In addition. Vivens turned the page. He conducted, shall we say, an unofficial investor into your late husband's financial affairs. In what way? I asked, feeling a chill go down my spine. Through his contacts at the bank, got information on the movement of funds in Mr. Haxton's accounts over the last 10 years. He was particularly interested in large transactions. Is that legal? Not exactly, Mariah interjected. And we can use it against them if we need to. Vivens pulled out another photograph. This was Tarkin yesterday. Your daughter-in-law was meeting with a lawyer. Palmer Wolf, not exactly the cleanest of reputations. Takes on shady cases. In the photo, Willow was sitting in a coffee shop across from a gay-haired man with a predatory profile. They looked to be engaged in a serious conversation. There's something else. Vivens paused. It checked the financial situation of your son and his wife. They're up to their eyeballs in debt. Credit cards maxed out. 2 mortgages, one of which is delinquent. Plus a large personal loan taken out about 6 months ago. What? I was shocked. Garrett never said anything about financial problems. According to the paperwork, the debts were mostly Mrs. Haxton's expensive purchases, vacations, home renovations, and they want my estate to pay off the debts. I finished, feeling the anger growing inside. I guess so. Vivens nodded. But there's good news. I did a little digging into your daughter-in-law's past. She's not as clean as she wants to appear. He handed me another sheet of information. Willow Sage before she was married. Changed her name at 21. Used to be Willow Price. Had trouble with the law. Petty fraud. Charges were dropped. Worked for 3 accounting firms, 2 of which she left after accusations of unethical behavior. In the last firm, I was involved in a strange story about a client's inheritance. Nothing was proved, but the residue remained. I stared at the papers, unable to believe my eyes. This couldn't be the Willow my son had chosen, but the facts spoke for themselves. Does Garrett know about this? I doubt it, Bivan said. She wore very careful to cover her tracks. It took a lot of connections for me to dig up that information. What do we do? I turned to Mariah. The first step is to secure your property, she said firmly. I've already prepared documents that prohibit any transactions with Cypress Grove without notarization from you. Then I think you should talk to your son alone. Find out what he knows and how involved he is in his wife's plans. I doubt he'll agree to a conversation without her. I sighed. Try. Mariah squeezed my hand. Maybe he's just confused and needs your help. I called Garrett the next day and suggested we meet for lunch. To my surprise, he agreed without hesitation, only asking me to pick a place away from their neighborhood to talk quietly. We met at a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town. Garrett looked tired and tense, dark circles under high size. It's been a long time since we've had lunch together, I said, trying to make conversation casual. Yeah, probably since last Christmas. He smiled weakly. How are you, Mom? Better than you by the look of you. Something wrong, Garrett? He looked away, twirling the water glass in Hishans. It's nothing, just work, stress and debt, I added quietly. His eyes widened. What? Garrett, I know about your financial problems, the loans, their late payments. He turned pale and looked around as if afraid someone was listening. How did you find out? Does it matter? I leaned forward. Why didn't you say anything? I could have helped. Help? He grinned bitterly. With what? With my modest pension. Not only that, I watched his reaction carefully. I have savings. Something else. The cypress grove. Hesed so quietly that I barely heard him. So, Garrett nodded without looking up. How long ago? About a month. Willow found some papers in Dad's desk when she was helping you clean. It mentioned an estate. So instead of asking me directly, you decided to spy on me, hire a detective, break into my house. I didn't, he stammered. It was Willow's idea. She said you wouldn't tell the truth anyway. And of course you believed her. Look, Mom, we're desperate. These debts, I didn't realize there was so much. Willow handled the finances and I just trusted her and let you spend more than you made. He clenched his fist on the table. You don't understand. Willow was used to ascertain standard of living. Her past husband. Past husband? I interrupted. What past husband are we talking about? Garrett looked confused. I thought you knew. Willow had been married before to some businessman. They divorced a year before I met her. I mentally flagged another lie. Bevans never said anything about a previous marriage. And this businessman was rich enough to get Willow used to a nice life. Garrett looked guilty. I wanted her to be happy with me, so she wouldn't feel like she'd taken a step back. And that's why you got into debts you can't pay off. I thought I could handle it. He raised his voice, attracting the attention of the neighboring tables. And then he lowered his tone. I was counting on promotions bonuses. And then the layoff started and everything went downhill. I looked at my son and my heart ached. When did he turn into this weak, scared man? Where was the cheerful, confident boy that Lloyd and I loved so much? Garrett, why didn't you come to me as soon as the trouble started? I'm your mother. I'm always there for you. Willow said it was humiliating to ask my parents for help at my age, that we should do it on our own. And then she found out about the estate and decided it was the solution to all problems. He nodded, looking away. She says it's not fair. That father should have divided the inheritance between us. What do you think? I didn't know. He looked me straight in the eye for the first time during the conversation. Why did he do that, Mom? Why leave everything to you and nothing to me? Garrett, the estate was a surprise to both of us. He was going to show it off for our 45th anniversary. I sighed. And I'm sure it was his plan for you to use it too. To make it a place for family gatherings, for celebrations. But he left it up to me to decide how and when that would happen. And you decided not to say anything. After you've heard Willow discussing old people's inheritance. Yeah, I decided not to say anything. Would you have done anything differently if you were me? Garrett lowered his head. She's not as bad as you. Think she's just really worried about the debt. We could lose the house, the cars, everything. How much do you owe? He gave me a number that almost took my breath away. And how does Willow plan on getting my estate? Garrett looked even more confused. She talked to a lawyer. He said it was possible to file a lawsuit to split the inheritance, that there are precedents where a court has found it unfair to leave the entire estate to a spouse, bypassing the children, especially if the spouse is not old and perhaps not mentally healthy, I guessed. His face flashed. Mom, I never said you were. But Willow did. I clasped my hands together to keep them from shaking. Garrett, don't you see what's happening? She's manipulating you, pulling you into a scam that could end very badly for both of you. It's not a scam. He was defending himself. This is about justice. It's about the fact that your father probably didn't want just you to have everything. Lloyd left a will, Garrett. Clear and unambiguous. His entire estate passes to me, and when I die to you. That was his choice. After you die, he muttered, how long do we have to wait? 5 years, 10, 20? We'll be bankrupt by then. I looked at him with growing horror. Was my son really discussing how long I had left to live? I never thought I'd hear you say those words, I said quietly. Garrett looked ashamed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. It's just the situation. Garrett, listen to me. Carefully. I leaned closer. I know about Willow's past, her legal troubles, her name changes, her questionable history at previous jobs. I know she's been lying to you. His face turned pale. What is this crap, Willow? Never. I have proof. And if she keeps coming after me, or trying to take the estate, I'll use it. Believe me, it won't end well for her or you. Are you, threatening us? His voice shook with resentment and anger. No, son. I'm trying to protect myself and you from a man who is using you both. Willow doesn't love you, Garrett. She loves money and status, and she'd do anything for it. You've always hated her. He pushed his plate away from the beginning. Never gave her a chance. Garrett, no, now you listen. He leaned forward, anger burning in his eyes. You never understood. Me or your father. Always in control. Always knew best. Why do you think father kept the estate a-scrap? Because you wouldn't have allowed him such extravagance. You'd always tell him to save money, to put it away. That's not true. And you know, it's true. You and your father always treated me like a child who couldn't make decisions. Always thought I wasn't good enough. And now you're accusing my wife of some crime without a shred of proof. I have proof, Garrett. What proof? Rumors. Gossip. He stood up. You know what, Mom? I'm not listening to this. We're going to file a lawsuit. And we're going to let the courts decide who's right. Garrett, please sit down. Let's talk calmly. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. I made mine. He threw the lunch money on Theatable and walked out without looking back. I remained seated, feeling the emptiness growing inside. Had I realized my son? Had this woman managed to take such a hold of his mind and heart? That evening I called Mariah and told her about the meeting. He's completely under her influence, I said tiredly. And they do plan to sue. Don't worry, Virginia. Legally, their position is very weak. Your husband's will is impeccable. There's no grounds for contesting it. Willow's talking about some kind of precedent. Let her talk, Mariah said with confidence. Bivens is still watching them. I want to know their every move. In the meantime, what am I supposed to do? Live your life as usual, but be very careful. Especially with documents, with phone calls, and under no circumstances sign anything they offer you. After the talk, I sat in the living room for a long time looking at old photographs. Here's Garrett, at 5 years old with a wide smile and a missing front tooth. Here's the three of us on a picnic. Lloyd laughing, hugging us both. When did it all go wrong? When did my loving son turn into this stranger willing to fight me for money? The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my reverie. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. In the evening. Who could have come at this hour? Through the peephole, I saw Willow. She was standing on the doorstep, tapping her foot impatiently. I didn't want to open the door, but I knew this conversation had to happen sooner or later. Willow. I opened the door. What a surprise. I need to talk to you. She slipped past me into the hallway without waiting for an invitation. About your meeting with Garrett today. Come on in, I suggested sarcastically, closing the door. She walked into the living room and stopped, arms crossed over her chest. What did you say to him? He came home, not himself. I told him the truth about the estate, about Lloyd's will, and about you, Willow. Or should I call you Willow Price? Her face twitched, but she quickly regained control. I don't know what you mean, she shrugged. I'm not here to discuss myself. I want to know why you kept his father's inheritance from Garrett. I didn't hide anything. The estate was left to me, not Garrett. And the decision of when and how to report it was mine too. That's convenient, she grinned. Especially when you're talking about $7 million. It's not about the money, Willow. It's about what? The principle. Pride. She came closer. Or is it that you just don't want to share? You want to control everything. Until your last breath. I want to protect what's rightfully mine. And I know why you need that money to pay off the debts you've made. Willow is visibly tense. Our finances are none of your bussiness. And my estate is none of yours. But that didn't stop you from breaking and entering, did it? I don't have time for these games, she said offensively. Here's how it's going to be. Either you agree to a fair division of the inheritance or we go to court. And believe me, I'll do everything I can to prove that you're unfit to administer such an estate. On what grounds? Well, she smiled, and there was nothing kind in that smile. An elderly widow recently lost her husband. Emotionally unstable with signs of paranoia and incipient dementia. The judge would listen. I felt a wave of anger rising inside. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a way out, Virginia. Simply and painless. Share what should be Garrett's, and we all win. And if I refuse, then there will be a war. Her eyes narrowed. And believe me, it's not the kind of war you want to fight at your age. I straightened up, looking her straight in the eye. Willow, or whatever your real name is. I worked for 40 years in the IRS. I've seen worse crooks than you, and I'm not afraid of war. She looked surprised for a moment, but quickly pulled herself together. Well, see, she headed for the door. You have a week to make a decision. Then we act. Don't bother counting to 7, I replied. My answer is no, and it won't change in a week or a month. You'll regret it. She threw over her shoulder and walked out, slamming the door loudly. I sank slowly into the chair, feeling my hands shaking. This was a declaration of war, and I wasn't. Sure, I was ready for battle. But one thing I knew for sure, I would not let this woman take what was rightfully mine. Not just for my own sake, but for the memory of Lloyd, who had so carefully planned this inheritance. In the morning, I called Mariah and told her about the night's visit. She openly threatened me, I said. Talked about dementia, about a trial, about proving I was incapacitated. This is serious. Mariah's voice sounded worried. Virginia, I think. We need to be proactive. There's something we can do, Dot. It's been a week of relative quiet since Willow's visit. No calls, no visits. Garrett stayed in touch as if our conversation at the restaurant had been our last. I kept checking my phone to see if I'd missed a message, if there was a missed call, but the screen remained blank. Mariah wasted no time. We met the day after Willow's visit, and she presented me with a whole defense plan. Well-prepared documents to prove her competency, she said. Going through the papers. A doctor's note, testimonials from friends and acquaintances. I've also contacted a financial advisor who is willing to certify that your estate decisions are completely rational. Is it really that serious? I asked, uncomfortable at the thought of having to prove the obvious, that I was sane. Unfortunately, yes, Mariah looked worried. Willow had found a weakness. If they prove you're incapacitated, even temporarily, Thecourt can appoint a guardian to administer the estate. And guess who the first candidate would be? Garrett. Aside. Exactly. And given Willow's influence, she have control of the estate. Thursday morning, I drove to Cypress Grove. Otis met me at the gate. his normally unruffled face looking worried. There were intruders here again yesterday. He pointed to the east city of the fence. 2. A man and a woman. The camera picked them up around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They weren't trying to break in, just taking pictures of the house from different angles. Did you recognize them? Same woman as last time. I've never seen the man before. Tall, grey-haired, business suit. Willow. And made the same lawyer, Palmer Wolf. They were getting ready for their next move. When I got home, I found a message from Garrett on my answering machine. His voice sounded tense and formal. Mom, we need to talk. We're coming over tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's important. Not I. So, he's coming with Willow and maybe not just her. I called Mariah immediately. They're going tomorrow, I said without preamble. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll be at your place at 1:30, she answered without hesitation. Don't worry, Virginia. We're ready. The night passed restlessly. I tossed and turned, trying to sleep, but my thoughts kept coming back to the meeting. What are they up to? How far are they willing to go? Mariah arrived right on time. Her presence immediately gave me confidence. Taut, collected, clear-eyed and firm-voiced. She exuded a calm strength. 8 exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and went to open the door. There were 3 people on the doorstep, Garrett looking pale and tense. Willow with a predatory smile on her thin lips and a tall grey-haired man in an immaculate grey suit. Undoubtedly Palmer Wolf. Mom? Garrett nodded without looking me in the eye. May I come in? Of course. I stepped back, letting them into the house. Come into the living room. I have a guest too. Willow visibly tensed when she saw Mariah sitting in a chair with a file on her lap. Who the hell is that? She asked sharply. Maria call my lawyer, I answered calmly. And you must be Mr. Wolf. The gay-haired man nodded, his cold eyes sliding over me appraisingly. That's right, Mrs. Haxton. Palmer Wolf, your son and his wife's attorney. What's the reason for this visit? I asked, sitting down across from them. Willow glanced at Wolf, and he nodded, pulling a file folder out of his briefcase. Mrs. Haxton, we're here to discuss your late husband's estate, specifically the Cypress Grove estate, which we've learned was acquired by Mr. Haxton in secret from his family and left to you in his will. Nothing was done secretly from the family, Mariah interjected. Minus Mr. Haxton had every right to dispose of his property as he saw fit, and he chose to leave everything to his wife, which is standard practice. Under normal circumstances, perhaps Wolf agreed. But in this case, the circumstances are unusual. Mr. Haxton concealed the existence of a significant asset, not only from his son, but also from his wife. That calls into question the transparency of his intentions. He was going to tell me about the estate on our 45th anniversary, I said. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see it. That's a convenient theory, Willow said. Where is proof? The letter Lloyd left me at the estate, I said flatly, which I could produce to the court if I needed it. Wolf frowned slightly, clearly not expecting that answer. In any case, he regrouped quickly. There is the matter of a fair division of the inheritance. Garrett is Mr. Haxton's only son, and according to the law, is entitled to a share in his father's inheritance. Only if there were no will, Maria parried. But there is a will, and it is perfectly clear. The entire estate goes to Virginia Haxton, without any conditions or reservations. Wills can be contested. Wolf smiled, showing perfectly straight teeth, especially if there is reason to believe that the deceased's will was distorted or that he was not fully aware of the consequences of his instructions. Do you have such grounds? Mariah asked, raising an eyebrow. We're working on it, Woof answered, evasively. But there is another aspect of the case. Mrs. Haxton's ability to manage such a significant asset as a $7 million estate. I tensed, sensing they were getting close to the main point. What's wrong with my ability? I asked bluntly. Woof opened the folder and pulled out several sheets. Mrs. Haxton, we have reason to believe that since your husband's death, you've been experiencing a severe emotional crisis that is affecting your cognitive function and your ability to make sound financial decisions. What the hell is that? I was outraged. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Wolf, Mariah said coldly. What is it based on? The family's observations. He nodded toward Garrett and Willow. It's also based on the opinion of a specialist. What kind of expert? I turned to my son. Garrett, what is he talking about? Garrett looked terribly confused, but Willow answered for him. Dr. Shields, the psychiatrist. He analyzed your behavior over the last few months based on our descriptions. Secrecy, paranoia, unfounded accusations, emotional instability, all pointing to post-traumatic stress disorder, complicated by early onset dementia. That's absurd. I could barely contain my anger. No doctor can diagnose a man he hasn't even seen. He's seen enough evidence, Willow insisted. Your behavior speaks for itself. Mariah pulled several documents out of her folder and placed them on the table in front of Woof. First, the report of Dr. Foster, the 30-year neurologist who had examined Mrs. Haxton last week. No signs of dementia, cognitive impairment, or emotional instability. Woof took the document, gave it a quick glance and frowned. Second, Mariah continued, airport from a financial consultant attesting to the rationality of all of Mrs. Haxton's financial decisions over the past year. Third, testimony from 6 people, including her former co-workers and neighbors, about her adequate behavior and clear mind. Willow was visibly nervous, her fingers rubbing the edge of her blouse. It doesn't mean anything. Our experts. And finally, Mariah pulled out the last document, a private investigator's report detailing all the illegal acts Mrs. Haxton committed against my client. Breaking and entering, trespassing, identity theft, all of which are felonies. By the way, Willow turned pale, but quickly pulled herself together. It's slander. She turned to Woof. They can't prove it. They can, Mariah said calmly. Surveillance footage. Fingerprints, witness statements. More than enough for the police. Woof tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the folder, clearly reconsidering strategy. It's an interesting twist, he said finally. But it does not waive our client's right to a portion of his father's inheritance, which is clearly defined in the will, Mariah reminded him. And I urge you to familiarize yourself with the state law on attempted inheritance fraud. Section 276, if I'm not mistaken. Very interesting reading. A tense silence hung in the room. Garrett looked lost. Willow looked furious. Woof looked thoughtful. I propose a compromise, Heffernan said. Minus Mr. Haxton relinquishes his claim to the estate, on the condition that Mrs. Haxton executeth deed to her son upon her death. No right of sale or alienation. It's already in my will, I said. Garrett is already my only heir. But you can change our will at any time, Willow pointed out. Can't I change it now? I raised an eyebrow. What was the point of this compromise? It's to make Lloyd Haxton's will legally binding, Wolf explained. To avoid possible changes in the future. You mean so I can't disinherit Garrett for that sneaky attempt to incapacitate me? I looked at my son, but he was still avoiding my gaze. We will not accept such a compromise, Mariah said firmly. My client has every right to dispose of her property as she sees fit. And if your clients continue these pressure attempts or use illegal methods again, we will go to the police and file a civil suit. You wouldn't dare, Willow hissed. He's your son. That's why it pains me so much to see you manipulate him, I said. Using him against me. No one's using anyone, Garrett protested, finally raising his voice. Mum, look, we just want justice. Your father left you a fortune, and you kept it from me. Your son, I was going to tell you, Garrett, when I'm ready, when I knew how best to handle this inheritance, but Willow didn't give me that opportunity. Don't blame it on Willow. He raised his voice. She's the only one who really cares about my future, unlike you and Dad. Garrett, I tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. Your father and I always wanted the best for you. Then why didn't leave? Me anything? There was a lingering resentment in his voice. Why didn't he even tell me about the estate? Didn't he trust me? He wanted it to be a surplus for both of us, I sighed. He wrote in the letter that he dreamed of you coming to the estate with your family, of grandchildren running around. Lies. Willow cut Willow off. Another Leto justify her greed. Woof closed the folder and stood up. I can see that we've reached an impasse. My clients offered a reasonable compromise that was rejected. Now I'm afraid we'll have to settle this matter in court. You'll lose, Mariah said firmly, and you'll only embarrass your clients. We'll see. Woof nodded at me. Mrs. Haxton, think again. Family proceedings are always painful for all parties, especially for people your age. For people my age, Mr. Woof. I stood up. The most painful thing is betrayal by loved ones, and I can handle the trial somehow. Willow stood up, eyes blazing with rage. You're going to regret this, Virginia. Well, prove you incompetent, and you'll lose everything. Write that threat down, Mariah, I said calmly. It'll come in handy in court. Garrett was the last to rise, still not looking at me. Come on, Garrett. Willow grabbed his arm. Asterisk, thanks for watching.